And we're live. Yes, I did it. I'm excited. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to On.NET Live. If this is the first time for you all being on the show, this is where, every other week we talk to different folks in the community and, different people working in .NET and just try and see what are some of the really interesting and cool projects that they're working on. So today I have my boy Isaac that's here, and he's going to show us some really cool IoT things that he's been working on in his house. But before we get to Isaac, really quick, what I want to do is just make some really quick announcements about some things that I think we should be paying attention to. Now, first off, a couple of weeks ago, we had Visual Studio. Not Visual Studio. A couple of weeks ago, we had .NET Conf, right? .NET Conf Microservice Edition, and that was a really cool conference. And we had speakers from all over the world talking about different things like Kubernetes and Dockers and all that types of stuff. If you missed that conference, make sure you go over to the YouTube channel. And we do have all those videos. They're recorded, they're up, and they're always there for you to check out and watch at like your leisure. The reason too why I wanted to bring it up was also .NET Conf is also happening again later this year, and the call for speakers is open. So I really want to see everyone submit a talk. I love to see Isaac submit a talk too. I might
already did.
See, there we go.
Already did.
I know James is watching. I hope James submits a talk. I hope we all submit talks. And we show everyone some of the really interesting things that we could do with .NET and what's going on in the ecosystem. Now, so now with that being said, let's kind of just get into it, right? So Isaac, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell folks who you are and what exactly do you do?
Sure. So my name is Isaac Levin. I'm a senior product marketing manager in Azure marketing at Microsoft. So my job basically is figuring out fun demos to do for our keynote events. Oh, no. Okay, we're good. So now everybody knows the reason why I look so good is because of Snap Camera. So what I do in my time is I build demos, come up with great ideas to tell great stories around some of our products. That has nothing to do with PrecenseLight, however, but I think it's, it goes to the thing where I love to kind of play around with new things and try to find solutions that everybody could take advantage of.
Awesome. I was just trying to figure out, how do I put myself back on?
You're on mute, Cecil.
I'm not on mute. What are you talking about? Am I on mute?
Not anymore.
This is going to be fun.
Yeah, we're doing it live.
We're doing it live. Okay. So Isaac, I know you and I have worked together on a few different, events and Ignite and like some of these types of things. And one of the things I always really appreciate about you was I find like you really have a love for technology. And when I say that, I mean like you don't just do it for work, but like you enjoy doing it, right? And you create like these really cool and interesting projects that, I might not necessarily be making money off of it. It's not something you're selling or putting in an app store, but it's really just to try and understand like how can I put these puzzle pieces together? And what kind of really cool and interesting experiences we could do to, like really push the boundaries of what we can do with .NET and Azure and some of these types of things. So with that being said, I kind of want you to tell us a little bit about this project PrecenseLight. And this is live, right? So I kind of want to get the backstory. Like, how did you decide to build this project? What is it about? And what are we talking about here?
Yeah. So before Teams, there was this thing called Skype for Business, right? I imagine that most people that have been professional technology people or even people in corporate world before, they took advantage of Skype for Business, right? It basically was the predecessor to Teams. So in the Skype for Business days, there was a tool written by Microsoft MVP Tom Morgan called Skew or Skyu. I don't know how to pronounce it. But basically what it was a tray app that you install on Windows and you connected to a Philips Hue light bulb, and it would basically detect what your Skype for Business presence was and then send it to the light bulb. And I thought that was brilliant. I used that for a long, long time. And then Teams came along, and then everybody's got Skype for Business removed from their machines, at least I did. And then I immediately found out, oh no, my light doesn't work anymore. And I've worked from home for a long time in my career, and the light was very, very beneficial for not just me, but for my wife and my kids. They know if it's red, leave dad alone. If it's green, you can come bother him. And basically what ended up happening is I was waiting for something of that, because I know that Teams had the ability to change lights based on your status, because they do that in the Teams app. So I kind of looked around. I found a user voice for Teams about this, and I saw somebody comment saying that it's coming in late 2019. Unfortunately, I work at Microsoft and I bothered that person. Unfortunate for him. So I said, hey, when is this going to be available for me to use? I would really love to do this cool proof of concept. And he gave me a date. And then when the date came out, I got the beta of the Graph SDK and I started coding up something really, really quick into a proof of concept. And that turned into something a bit bigger because I saw that there was value, especially going into 2020. More people started working from home because of COVID-19. And I just saw an opportunity there should be opportunities for people to use this that aren't technical. So I went down the process of building an application that's available in the Windows Store today that you can install. You don't have to be technical. All you have to do is just know how to connect your light bulbs to it. And then you can play around with it. And it's just one of those things that I think is really, really awesome. And it's been great. This is the first thing I think in my blog post, I blogged about it. This is the first thing that I've actually built to completion, I feel like, in my career. And it was definitely fun. And now I'm kind of in that open source ecosystem where people are, opening issues and opening PRs and doing all sorts of fun stuff. So it's been amazing.
So I guess that means you're an official open source maintainer now.
God,
hit that checkbox,
yeah,
views and comments and feature requests and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where, at least for me, unfortunately, I get motivated by attention. So I check my stars, I check my forks. I'm like, yeah, things are going good. And then days where I don't have a lot of clones, I'm like, why are people cloning my repo? What's going on? But yeah, no, it's been fun. And just to calm out, so Casey in the YouTube chat, this is not my living room. If this was my living room, I would be probably wearing a nicer shirt. This is the background. So I'm sorry if I got anybody's hopes up about where I'm living, but this is not where I'm living.
I mean, I believe in speaking your aspirations into reality, right? And so, hey, if that's what the goal is, man, let's work to it, right?
Yeah, well, and James is saying that he can see the edges of my green screen, which is really embarrassing. But I think there's a guitar over there. So anyway, yeah, it's been fun working with PrecenseLight, and I think you mentioned as well. I've always been somebody that just plays around with stuff, and I have a handful of different things that I've been working on that have been, I built a GitHub status tracker, and I've built other sorts of fun stuff. But we're here to talk about PrecenseLight. So let's talk about PrecenseLight.
Right. So like you mentioned before, PrecenseLight is available. It's open source. You can get it in the Windows Store, right? Yep. So if folks just want to download it and install it and run it, they could do that. Or if you're interested in kind of diving into the code and seeing your process about how you build it and how you test it and do some of these types of things, they can also go into the GitHub link as well, and they can get that information.
Yeah, so PrecenseLight is available not only through the Windows Store, but it's available for Chocolatey, the new WinGet package manager. I have a nightly version that's available on the GitHub page. I'm trying to make it, everybody who has their different religion, so to speak, on how to get their software. So I wanted to accommodate everybody. And that's the WPF version. So I built, to talk about the technology side just a little bit, I imagine we'll get there. But so I built a WPF app, which is a desktop client application written in .NET Core 3, and that's in the Windows Store. I'm currently playing around with this idea of having, okay, so what if only the people that use Windows can use PrecenseLight? So over the course of the last few months, I built a cross-platform version of PrecenseLight that uses Blazor as well as ASP.NET Core Worker Service to run everywhere. And right now, I have it running in my house. I have it running on a Raspberry Pi. So yeah, and it's I have everything, I've had things connected to Alexa, so I can say Alexa whatever, and it'll change stuff. Yeah, and again, it's just cross-platform, and I think that people with Macs could definitely take advantage of it, especially.
That's interesting. And so as you're talking, I'm just thinking there's so many different things that we could talk about when it comes to this project, right? I'm super interested in learning about the distribution aspect of it. Right?
Yeah.
We talk a lot about software, about the building of it and the architecture of it and those types of things. But the distribution of it, I think, is something that's important, particularly when you're talking about distributing, not just on Windows or on the web, but also distributing cross-platform. But before we do get into that, I really do want to talk about the architecture. Could you tell me a little bit about And you mentioned this before, but I kind of want to dive deeper into it.
Yep.
What exactly is this thing built on? Like, what are the components? What does the structure look like? Like, what's in the box?
Yeah, so the primary version of PresenceLight, which is a .NET Core 5 preview WPF application, so Windows Presentation Framework. So that's the de facto standard for building modern Windows applications. So that's built in there. It takes advantage of a couple of open source libraries, like for different tools and different widgets on the site. It also uses the Graph API, like I said. So Microsoft has the Microsoft Graph, which houses a whole bunch of information, not just about individuals, but about organizations in general. And I take advantage of using the SDK for that, written in C#. From there, I'm doing miscellaneous things. I'm also interacting with the lights APIs, which, in different scenarios, different lights have different APIs. So LifeX, which is a bulb I support, is different than how you communicate with Hue and Yeelight. And maybe you have some home automation software that accepts like GET and PUT requests, like that is supported as well. And that requires a different thinking as a part of it. So that's kind of the technology that I'm using in the app in general. And then as pertains to like the project structure architecture, I'm definitely not an architect, but like I have a shared library and I have a presentation library. And then I have a package library or a package project, because in order to build WPF apps that can deploy to the Windows Store, you have to take advantage of packaging them. So I package them and they get put into the local store. And then when you actually want to deploy them, you deploy that package up to the Windows Store via API. So that's the technology. If you have any particular questions or if you want to look at some code, we can do that too.
Yeah, and just really quickly before we continue, so we have some folks that are just jumping in and they haven't, they weren't here in the beginning, so they're not sure exactly what we're talking about. And so some of them are asking, well, hey, what's today's topic like? What are we talking about?
Yeah.
And so for folks that are just here, this is my friend Isaac, and Isaac is talking to us about a project he created called PresenceLight. And PresenceLight is an IoT project built on a lot of cool, interesting technology that we're going to discuss as we go on. But he's using .NET and he's using some APIs and IoT devices, and he's using that to pretty much like light up his status, for better words, I suppose.
Yeah, well, and I know that's great to describe, but maybe you want to see a demo?
Yeah, let's take a look and see what this looks like.
Yeah, so let's switch over to my screen really quick.
Okay.
All right, so you see my screen right here. So I have Teams on one side and PresenceLight on the other side. So PresenceLight, as you can see, like the UI isn't the greatest experience. I've never once said I was a UI person, but as you can see here, there's different configuration settings that you can add for it, and then you can configure individual bulbs, right? So right now I have LifeX plugged in. So what happens is, do you also see my camera, for the camera that's pointed at the light?
I can add it. There you go.
Yeah, let's add it.
You're seeing the camera like down here.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So people will see the camera. It's pointed on a LifeX light bulb. So if I go in here into Teams and if I change my status to available, that light will update to green. And so it takes a little bit of time because there's a delay. But in the situation where if I want to change it to a different color, like yellow, for instance, a couple of seconds, it'll change it to yellow. So that's basically the experience of PresenceLight, right? So you can actually take the presence that you're broadcasting in Teams, and then you can just send it up to a light bulb. And I've had some people want to customize colors and things like that, and I'm currently kind of architecting how I'm going to be able to have more flexibility in the colors. But right now, it's very straightforward. Green's available. Red is busy, yellow is away, and purple is do not disturb. Okay. And then obviously, if you're not syncing at all, it's white. And then you can change your colors however you want using any other method. But that's kind of the quick demo of PresenceLight. And like I said, we support a handful of different lines. We support Philips Hue and Yeelight, which I don't have, and LifeX, and also custom APIs. One thing as well that's kind of cool that I did just as a proof of concept, just as a very, very sad, I guess you could say, branding, not branding, but I'm basically promoting myself. So when Scott Hanselman did his demo at Build, he used PresenceLight. So one of the things that he did, which got a lot of interest, is that he was able to change his light to match his Windows theme. And he did that by clicking this button, and then the light changes to blue. So if I change my Windows theme, it'll actually do the same thing. And then you can sync Teams presence like I did earlier. And then you can actually just set an individual color. Like for instance, if I want to have it set to red, it'll set to red. So it's, I don't want people to think of it as like a light manager, but it definitely, there's some light management capabilities within it. And I see Dot Morton. Morton's on the call. So Morton, I take full advantage of his. I originally started out with using his LifeX local one, but I just ended up going down the route of using the Cloud API, partially because I had issues. Because originally PrecenseLight ran in my office at work, and unfortunately, some of the networking restrictions of Microsoft didn't allow you to connect over a local network. So because the actual bulb itself didn't have, I think it was either a MAC address or an IP address that it wasn't able to find. So I went down the path of using the cloud one, which actually, funny enough, it didn't exist. So I wrote the wrapper for the LifeX Cloud API, which is also available on GitHub. But yeah, so that's a quick demo of PrecenseLight. I also have like this general screen here that updates. So for instance, if you change this to available, like your availability and your activity will change here. One of the things that's pretty interesting in general, and it looks like something broke. So cool, something's not working live. That's awesome. But at the end of the day, the biggest thing to consider is that LifeX and Philips Hue are supported very, very well. And then we have Yeelight support and custom APIs as well.
Great, awesome. And one of the things I'm curious about, because the first time I saw this project, at least when I first noticed this project, it was using that LifeX bulb, that piece of hardware.
Yep.
And I think that was the only one it was using at the time. And this was a while ago, right?
Yeah.
But now I see you have support for all of these different types of bulbs and things like that, which I think is amazing, first of all. But two, as a developer, I'm wondering, well, what was that like for you to add support for these different pieces of hardware, right? Were these just different APIs you had to bring in, or was there a hardware aspect of it that you had to work through? Right? Like, are there NuGet SDKs? Like, there's so many interesting questions there. So, like, how did you do that?
Yeah. So originally, the LifeX was used for Philips Hue, because that's what I had. And then as we went through the process of building the Ignite demo, we partnered with LifeX for the actual Ignite demo. Like they did a cross promotion and things like that. So the folks at LifeX were nice enough to say, hey, here's some bulbs for you to test. So it's just, for instance, this particular light here, it's LifeX, but I have a Hue light downstairs and stuff like that. So I'm actually using a couple of different types of lights throughout my house, and they're all being kind of powered by PrecenseLight.
Got it. Okay. And so there's, and I'm looking at your thing. So there's LifeX, there is Philips Hue, and then I also see you have a section that says configure custom API. Like what's that about?
Yeah, so there's some scenarios which some people have some home automation equipment. I'm not, even though it might seem like I'm not a big home automation person, like I haven't just had the opportunity to set that up. Sure. But some people have basically these services that are running on their network that you can actually send requests to. So for instance, if you wanted to say, okay, whenever the light setting changes to available, I want to send an API call to a particular API endpoint, which might trigger lights or it might open the refrigerator or whatever, right? Like it just gives you the opportunity to further custom, and we support that in PrecenseLight. Actually, it was a community contribution because I don't have any of the cool stuff set up there.
Right, awesome. We have an interesting question coming in here from YouTube. I'm going to put this on the screen really quickly. And the question says, is it possible to sync with Azure Devops build status? Is that something that we could do?
I would imagine so. So right now, this is tied directly. This is pretty coupled to presence in Teams, but you can definitely, using the Graph SDK, write up something that checks the status of a build. I'd imagine you could do something similar with GitHub Actions as well. The hardest part is just finding the particular thing that you want to basically poll or listen on, and then the rest of it you can take my code, and for all the light interaction, it's pretty straightforward.
Nice. Oh, and it looks like we just got rated from InstaFluff. InstaFluff is
Oh
bringing
yeah,
in 43 new viewers.
welcome.
Over on Twitch. We got 43 new folks coming in. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, InstaFluff. Appreciate InstaFluff. He does a lot of great stuff on Twitch. If you've never checked out his channel before, make sure you go ahead and do that. So for all the new folks that are coming in, I guess we got to tell them what we're doing here, right, Isaac? Like, let's give them again.
Yeah, so I guess the long and short of it, we're talking about this cool project that I built. Well, I'm biased. I think it's cool. That allows you to take your Microsoft Teams presence and send it to a light bulb. So I'll just do the demo again because we have 40 new people who might be interested in downloading it to make my numbers look better. But as you can see, one of the cameras that we have here is pointed on a light that's green, and as you can see here, my status on Teams is green. So if I go over to Teams and I change my status to busy, it will actually update the light. So as you can see, the light turns red, my face thingy here turns red, and then I can, for instance, I can switch it back to available or any of the other colors, and that will update as well. So it just gives you the ability to control the lights in your office based on your availability, so people in your house know what you're doing. For instance, I have my kids walk in and their mom, my wife, goes, "Oh, Dad's red," and then they leave them alone. Sometimes they leave me alone. Other times they just barge you with no pants on, but that's a whole different thing.
Like, I don't care, Daddy.
They don't care. They don't care. They'll look and they'll point and they say it's red, and I'm like, "Yep, I'm on a call," and they see people's faces and they're like, "It's red." I'm like, "Mm-hmm." But joys of having a 4 and a 2-year-old. So
yeah, it's so funny you said that because I've had a couple meetings today, and school in our county here in Florida just started on Wednesday, started yesterday. So today is the end of the second day. And, so he's in class in another room and I'm here in meetings, and he's constantly like, "Oh, hey, Daddy, like, I can't hear the teacher. Oh, hey, Daddy, like, the internet cut out. Oh, hey, Daddy," like, stuff keeps happening and he keeps coming through. And as much as I love him and I want to keep helping him, I'm just like, I really want to finish this meeting so I can go get stuff. So it's really cool, man. So I wish I had a bulb like outside of my door right now that could be like, "Oh, Daddy's like super red. I really can't go in there right now."
Well, yeah. So also, like, one of the things I said is you can set do not disturb, and that turns purple, which is like the super Daddy's face is on the screen. Do not come in here. Or even to my wife, like my wife will just come in here and she'll be, doing stuff because this is her space as well. And then I'll be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And she's like, "Are you on camera?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Okay, it's fine then." So she doesn't respect the light either. So to Eric point in the chat, so the name of the project is PrecenseLight. Do I have the ability to just give you the URL for PrecenseLight? That's a $1 million question.
Paste it in the chat if you want to.
Yeah, so that's there. Do I have the ability to?
Yeah,
I gotta log
it in there. If it doesn't work, and I can do it.
Yeah, well, I gotta go to one of the streams, which I'm not open.
Okay. Well, no, we just post it right here in the middle. So I'll just post it. I should be able to do all destinations and post this in here, and everyone should see that. So,
oh man, thank you .NET and Visual Studio for helping me out.
So hopefully everyone should see the GitHub repo, and then Isaac, I believe you also said it's in the Windows Store. So if folks, for those of you that are on Windows devices, you can head over to the Windows Store, or you could use Chocolatey, and you could search for PrecenseLight. And again, I know we have a lot of new folks that are joining us, which is why I keep repeating what we're doing. PrecenseLight is Isaac's project that you could use to like shine a light on your status, right? And let folks know whether you're busy or you're free or like you're in super do not disturb mode using some IoT lights and some really cool tech that he's built using .NET and the Graph API. Yeah,
and one thing that's cool as well, if there's some folks that are here that are like, "Oh, Windows, boo," right? I know this is .NET, and we love every operating system, even Windows and even Linux and even Mac OS. So there is a version of PrecenseLight that works on any platform. For instance, I have PrecenseLight running on a Raspberry Pi. So I have a link here to a web app. Oops. So this is a web app that I built. So basically it allows you to download the versions of PrecenseLight for your particular operating system. right? And you're like, oh, that's sketchy. You're having me download like some zip file. But please bear with me. If I could download the zip file. So let's just do this. Let's just download the Windows version. And so the cool thing about PresenceLight is that it's cross-platform, and I'm taking advantage of some of the cool things that are available in ASP.NET Core. I can publish a single file executable. So if I zip out and extract this, I can open up this, and as you can see here, let me zoom in a little bit, Cecil. If you like, there's only a handful of actual files here. So this is, you don't need .NET installed on your machine to run this. So this is the entire framework, .NET Core framework, and everything that you need. So I can actually go inside here and run a Windows terminal command, and I can just go PresenceLight.exe, and it'll fail because I think there's an issue with my build. Unable to run service, blah, 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 blah. Oh, cool, somebody merged something into my nightly that didn't work. It's a good thing that I have a version that works, right? Nice. So if you take a look at my code here, so this is a built version. So how I would actually do that is I can actually go back and I'll show you where it sits. So we'll go, don't mind where my source code sits, PresenceLight worker. So I'm going to delete the publish folder here, and I'll hop out, and then I'm going to run .NET command, right? So I'm going to go .NET publish Win86, which is Windows. I'm going to output it to a publish directory. I'm going to have this release configuration, and I'm going to use this MS build identifier, publish single file equals true. So what that's going to do is it's going to actually take the entire built application, including the entire .NET Core runtime that's needed, and it's going to output it as a single file executable. So if I go in here, you can see here there's only a handful of files. And then if I go into this publish folder, oops, go into this publish folder, and then I go PresenceLight, it'll start running something, right? So I have something running on my machine, and it looks like I can listen on this localhost 5000. If I pop open a browser, PresenceLight. So this is the exact same experience. So if we go, and I can actually, let me just stop PresenceLight running on the desktop so they don't conflict with each other.
Okay.
And stop that, exit. So now it turns white, right? And then turn green. But I can actually go boom, set the color. Didn't work. Anyway, so let's try. I think I have a bug in my code, but I can actually go in here and I can change this to red. And it won't update. Cool, demo fail. That's, well, we tried. So one of the things, yeah, so this does work. It runs on my Raspberry Pi locally. I'm not 100% sure what's going on here. Let's try something. Let's try this. Set my groups, status, LifeX. Did that do anything? No. Let's try this. Let's change this to run in a second. Does that do anything? No. All right, well, you win some, you lose some. But
I've seen it work.
I know.
We have
it's literally been running all day. I did a demo 5 minutes ago, but I'm guessing that I did something wrong at some point. But that's fine. So I guess one of the cool things about PresenceLight, and like I said, the Blazor, so the technology of this version, it runs server-side Blazor. So that's the web UI here. And then if you actually look I keep on clicking on the wrong screen. If you look here, so they have an ASP.NET Core worker service that is constantly polling the Graph API based on that status. So I'm sharing the status between the UI and the worker service. And the worker service is what pushes everything out to it pulls from Graph and it pushes to the lights. So it's just, again, like this is kind of like in beta mode. So I'm surprised it actually didn't work. Not surprised. But the goal is here is that it'll just work, right? I have it running on a Raspberry Pi on downstairs, and I actually don't use PresenceLight on my desktop. So I built, so PresenceLight, like it runs on that Raspberry Pi. It's been running probably since the last time I rebooted it, which was days ago. Right. But it's cool. Like, and this is just another opportunity to do something fun. So really cool. If people want to, help contribute in any way, like I'm definitely taking PRs for any of this stuff, the WPF version, which is like the official supported one, right, and the Blazor one.
Okay, great. So we saw some interesting demos about how PrecenseLight works. We saw this UI, and then we also saw like there was a Windows version of the UI that we could click through.
Yep.
I want to dive a little bit more into the technology that it's sitting on top of, and particularly to why don't we start talking about how you were able to integrate with Microsoft Graph?
Sure. So that's the best story with PrecenseLight. So in order for PrecenseLight to work, you need, and it works now. So I just had a token that didn't work. So I can go in here and change. So I'm like, I don't like seeing things that don't work. So hopefully that works. And it didn't work anyway. Cool. Anyway, well, I'm going to keep talking about kind of what it takes to get PrecenseLight up and running. So in order for PrecenseLight to work, you actually need access to the Graph API. So the Graph API is something that's accessible via creating an Azure AD application, so Azure Active Directory application. And from there, you have the ability to configure certain things. Let's see if I can actually probably show you in the Azure portal. Let me just make sure all my stuff is hidden.
And then while you're doing that, like I could talk really quickly about Microsoft Graph and at least what I think it is, right? Because I know different folks have like, oh, can I do this with Graph or can I do that with Graph? And for me, my understanding is that Microsoft Graph is essentially an API over all of your data that lives in Office 365, Microsoft 365. So that means that you have integrations with Outlook, with Excel, you have integrations with Teams, you have integrations with like SharePoint, your calendars, sending email, like all this types of stuff. But now you can programmatically start to use these things using the Graph API. And I'm pretty sure there's some extra stuff in there too that I don't know about that we could probably do as well. So Isaac, from my understanding, what you're using is that Graph API to get access to some of the things that are inside of Microsoft Teams, like the status. And then it's using that status to now change the colors and things of that nature of the bulb.
Yep. Yeah, so what I'll do actually, let me just hop over here. Cool. All right. So when you create an Azure Active Directory application that targets Microsoft Graph, one of the things that you need to do is you need to define the scopes that you want to use. So PrecenseLight to take advantage of the Presence API, as well as to get my picture from Graph and to get my name and stuff like that. I have to take advantage of the presence.read, as well as, let me zoom in a little bit for you. If you can't see this. All right, cool.
Yeah,
yeah, so if you take advantage of the user read and the presence.read, which great enough do not require admin consent. So one of the things let's just talk about Azure Active Directory applications a little bit. So Azure Active Directory applications, they require consent of some sort. So if I build an app and you want to run that app, you actually have to consent to it. Like you basically, everybody's seen it. You go to a website and it says, do you want to accept? And you click accept and the app works. In some scenarios, different scopes require admin consent, which means that an administrator of your Azure Active Directory tenant needs to be able to actually go in there and click the accept button. So PrecenseLight doesn't need that because the presence.read and user.read scopes do not require consent. So once you've configured that, the next thing you want to do is actually start to configure, okay, for my app, what do I actually want to do? So if we switch back over to my desktop really quick. So what you're going to do is you're going to configure some redirect URIs for your application, and you want to set up the tenancy of it. So just to talk about tenancy a little bit. So if I want PrecenseLight to just work for people in the Microsoft tenant, it would be a single tenant application. So that means only people in Microsoft could use it. However, I like the thought of PrecenseLight being used by everybody in the world, which is silly, but that's how I see it. So with that, you actually create a multi-tenant application, and that allows anybody from any Azure Active Directory tenant to grant permission to this application on their tenant. So I select multi-tenant there, and then I specify particular redirect URIs, right? So redirect URIs basically is when I make a call to Graph, it's going to ask to log in. I'm sorry, when I log in or I go to Azure Active Directory, it's going to ask me to log in, and then it's going to send that request back to an application of sorts, right? So as you can see here, I have some defined, right? I have localhost, and I have this is the IP address of my Raspberry Pi in my house, so don't steal that local only IP address. But for PresenceLight, the desktop app, you actually take advantage of the native client redirect URI, and that's supported by Graph for WPF desktop applications. So that's a really, really straightforward, high-level way of how you configure an Azure Active Directory application. Theoretically, I could do a lot of things with it. I could get my calendar as well. I could do all sorts of fun things. But for this, I just need Presence API, which it was recently taken out of beta in June, I believe, June or July. So you don't need to use the beta SDK any longer. You can use the production bits. And I just talked for a long time, so I'm sorry.
No, that's great. I like showing these things because a lot of folks are like, hey, I want to build something like this. I want to build something that uses Graph. I want to build something that relies on those 80 tokens in Azure. But I actually don't know how to build it, right? And so it's always great when we could tell these stories where we show what the background is, how we build up to get to this point. So we saw this. We saw how to configure the application, right? At least the quote unquote AD application.
Yep.
I'd love to see what some of the code looks like, right?
Man, you're gonna make me show my really terrible code. That's fine.
It's on GitHub anyway, right? So we already know.
Yeah, I guess that's true. It is on GitHub anyway. So I'm gonna open on VS Code just because if you want to debug and stuff, I can open Visual Studio. But so the high level, I guess you could say, structure of PresenceLight is that there's 4 projects. So I open these up. So there is the PresenceLight core project, which shares, which is basically shared services. It's like how you connect or how you interact with the different Light APIs. And that's written in .NET Standard. You have the PresenceLight project, which is your client desktop application. And then you have the package project, which is used to generate app manifests and things like that to deploy to the Windows Store. And then finally, I have this .worker, which is the Blazor worker version. I guess what I'll do is I'll show you the interesting bits to actually pull the Graph API as well as hit the lights. So if I go to, let's see if I remember where it is. I haven't looked at this particular section of the code in a while. So let's do this. And let's go to, and I'm sorry that my kid and my wife are playing right now, but that's the life we live.
That's fine. It happens to me all the time too.
Yeah. So I had this call graph function. And inside call graph, and is this size good, or do you need me to go up?
I would say bump it up another 2 points, maybe. Yeah, looks good.
Cool. All right. So this call graph function, which is basically it's iterated whenever the application starts. And one of the things that you build first is you build a client to the Graph API, and we can take a look at individual pieces of code if anybody wants. But then there's some boilerplate, and then this is the stuff that's interesting. So I get a profile and a presence object, and I get a photo. So if I take a look at this get batch content, must have not built it. So, all right. So if I get a get batch, so one of the cool things about the Graph API and the Graph SDK written in .NET is that you can actually send multiple graph calls at the same time, and they get batched together, so you can get around throttling limits. So in this particular get batch content, I'm getting 3 different things. I'm getting my profile information, so that's how I get my name, for instance. I also get my profile picture in a stream, and then I get the presence object. So I make all those requests, and then at the end of it, I have a user object and a presence object. And then from there, I can go back up. Oops. Could go back up, and then I map out the UI, which I set the tray icon. The tray icon changes color based on what your status is, and I update the UI. So I change the red, yellow, or green. I change the circle that's on that main page, and then after that is when I actually start to configure the interaction with the light bulbs. So I have this method called set color. Inside of set color, let's find the main one. Yeah. So inside of set color, I don't know where it is. Here we go. So basically, I'm doing a lot of conditional checks here. Basically checking different connection configurations. So making sure that I have a particular light bulb enabled, checking if I have all the prerequisites to actually interact with that light bulb. And then I call individual services for each bulb. So all those services sit in that .NET Standard library. So if I go here and go to PrecenseLight Core and go to Lights, and just let's use LifeX for instance. So inside of here, I can get also when I actually want to set the color, these are all different methods to get different information, like getting all the lights or getting the groups. But if I want to set the color, I go off of the availability and then I set the colors individually. Like there's a better way to do this. I know, so everybody who wants to judge me. But at the end of the day, this sends a particular color. And then finally, I make a call to using the LifeX Cloud API to hit and set that particular state. And I do a very, very similar thing with all of the lights. It's just that the individual SDKs and APIs are a bit different. So for instance, I have the Philips Hue version, and this will look very similar, right? So I do the availability, and then I just do all of this. So theoretically, what I could probably do is merge them all into one function. But there's subtle nuances with each of the different SDKs that I just thought it didn't matter. So that's kind of the high level of how you hit the Graph API and then how you interact with lights.
Great. As always, if folks really want to dive into the code and see exactly where things are laid out and how it looks, you can always head over to GitHub. But we shared that link earlier. We're probably going to share it again just before we get off. But you can always head over to GitHub. You can clone the repo. You could try it out yourselves on some of your own devices. You could see just exactly how this thing is working. Now, I wanted to look in the chat really quickly and just acknowledge some of our friends over here. We have one comment that says, white theme. Oh, my eyes. Oh, no. So it looks like someone thinks like your lights are, your color theme is super bright. And you know what's funny? All the time. If I have VS Code in like a non-dark theme, people are like, no light
Well,
theme.
It's funny because our friend Burke Holland, he will always say that there's, oh, my light is freaking out right now. Oh, I know why.
Is it buffering?
No, I literally have it running on the Raspberry Pi still. So that's the reason why it hasn't been working very well, is because I have it running on the Raspberry Pi downstairs and I'm trying to do it for my desktop as well. So cool. Anyway, so I'm going to set it back to white. So our friend Burke Holland will say it's been scientifically proven that no theme matters, right? And this light is going crazy.
It is going crazy.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. This is what open source software is. It just breaks whenever you need to show it in public.
We can call it open source disco. That's what's going on right now.
Yeah. Well, actually, I hit the button and now it's just like party, and it just starts going off.
Nice.
So yeah, me personally, I like light theme, and I've always liked light theme. I'm also the weird person that literally never. I'm gonna stop that thing. So I'm gonna stop this polling service.
We just pause that. We can take that off real quick.
Yeah, it's fine. I just stopped it, so it's gonna stop. So yeah, like I'm the weirdo that in Visual Studio, I will literally like not touch any of the theming. Like some people go in there and mess with all the themings, but I do not do that. So I don't know. It works for me.
Yeah, dude, I switch between themes all the time.
This light is going crazy. I don't know what's going on.
I think you have some buffered like messages or whatever going to your light, and it's just like.
It's possible. It's possible, but it's definitely funny. Really, really funny. But yeah, like it's one of those things where everybody has their opinion. And I'm sorry that I hurt your eyes with my white theme. I guess I could probably just change the theme, right?
Sure.
What themes I have.
And then moving forward a little bit too, we have another comment from Jay, the developer, and Jay's asking, "Are you using the MSAL for authentication?" And before you answer that, really quick for folks, MSAL, if you're unfamiliar with it, is the Microsoft Authentication Library, and that's used in a few different places, particularly when you're authenticating with Azure things. But it can also use in non-Azure scenarios as well. But are you using that for auth?
Yeah, so actually let's do something fun here. Let's take a look and see what actual packages I'm using as a part to get PrecenseLight working. So if I go down to my project file, if you look here, so I'm using Microsoft Identity Client, and I'm using the Graph API. So Microsoft Identity Client is it's basically MSAL. But they're currently rewriting this to be a bit more robust in certain scenarios. So I'm actually gonna port this over to a new NuGet package sometime in the future. And then if I look at the worker service, look at the project, you're gonna see some very, very similar things, right? So Microsoft Identity Client and then the Graph Beta, right? The Graph API. So that's all I really need. And then the rest of the stuff, it uses like the cache. So Microsoft Identity, configures your caching. It configures the creation of all of your different mechanisms, refreshing your tokens, all that sort of cool stuff. So yeah, one of the things that I want to do with PrecenseLight is kind of do like a tutorial on like how you do this particular thing. I just have gotten distracted and I haven't been able to devote any time to it. But it'd be one of those really, really cool things where, hey, I want to actually create an Azure AD application. Or, hey, I want to be able to connect to Graph using the SDK in this particular way. I know there's a lot of demos out there that exist, but I think it's always good to show your opinion on how to get to things.
Sure. I see another comment in here. This one is coming from Twitch, and it's saying theme switcher on VS Code from chat. Now that would be interesting. And so I'm guessing what that user is saying is, because we can have these extensions and commands and whatnot that you put into Twitch. Imagine putting in a Twitch command that changes the theme of your VS Code. That could be an interesting thing to talk about. Probably not for PrecenseLight, but maybe they could be your PrecenseLight based on a command.
That would not work well with me. My particular workflow does not involve my theme changing every half hour. That would be a bummer. I'm literally like losing my mind at the moment because this light keeps turning on different colors and I don't understand why. But them's the breaks, kids.
That's funny. I wouldn't be surprised if your kids were like pranking you. Does anyone else in the house use this other than you?
So my 4-year-old figured out that so he's got a little tablet, a Fire tablet, and he somehow got one of the apps to control the Hue light bulbs, and he will actually go in and mess around with stuff. So he's definitely done that. Yeah, it's been a challenge working from home sometimes with the kid, but it looks like Cecil is frozen. So maybe, I don't know. But one of the cool, yeah, you were frozen.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's fine. It's fine. So what you need is something that makes your internet faster in your office.
I do. Maybe I just need new internet. Can someone make a new internet just for me so I can have that?
Yeah. One of the things, so funny enough, and this is just to plug a product, and I don't really like plugging products, but so we use Google Nest in the house, and it does a great job. I get 500. I'm 500 up and down, and I'm like 350 right now on wireless. And the router is you see where my fireplace is back here? This fireplace that's not really mine. It's way over there and then down another level. Yeah. So yeah. So I have a fireplace upstairs. That's pretty bougie, right? Is that 2 fireplaces? Yeah,
I think you do, man. You're balling out over there.
And a piano that I don't know how to play.
But we see people that have pianos in their house most likely don't know how to play them. They're just
we actually have a piano in the house, and I'm trying very, very slowly to learn how to play. My son, who's 4, and he had 2 piano lessons, will walk up and he just plays arpeggios, perfect, sequentially sounding things, and I'm like, what is this? And he's like, oh, it heard on one of my songs. So he listens to music, and so I think he's going to be very musically talented. That's a whole different thing.
That's awesome. But this conversation kind of has me thinking, have you heard any stories or comments or feedback from folks that are using PrecenseLight that are like, oh, hey, I use it for this thing in my house. I use it for a really cool scenario.
Yeah. As with most open source stuff, the only time people really come to me is when they want me to make changes that satisfy just them. So I'm unfortunately, I'm going to be putting a couple people on blast because they know who they are, because they're the people who open up all the most GitHub issues. But yeah, like I've definitely gotten like a ton of people have reached out to me and said, this is great. Thank you so much. It's helped me.
Right.
And to Remoku, like my API key, like it's not a big deal if it gets leaked because I'll just generate a new one. At the end of the day, people have been very, very happy with it. And there's been some people that want some small changes to it that fit their workflow a bit better, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And, you know, one thing that I think that's pretty interesting as well in general about PresenceLight is that I want to be very clear. Like, you don't have to be technical to use it. Like, that was the whole point of me putting it in the Windows Store and making it fairly straightforward from like a usability perspective. Because I want people that are working from home and they already have smart lights in their house. I want them to be able to take advantage of that, because everybody's going through some tough times right now with working from home and kids at the house and all that sort of stuff. And I just want people to take advantage of another tool in their tool belt to say like, hey, this will help.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And it would definitely be, I think it could be a fun project too that even the kids could get into, right? So you could be like, hey, you know, kids, hey, come help us, help mommy and daddy set up this thing, right? Or, you know, oh, look at this really cool light that we have on. So
yeah. And one of the cool things so I was actually approached by the company Particle. Particle, they build IoT solutions, and they actually want to do a hackathon with me on setting up PresenceLight to one of their devices. So we're going to be doing that next month. And that should be fun, right? So it'll be an opportunity for me to, you know, plug in another tool into PresenceLight. So if you're in the IoT world and you love Particle stuff, we're definitely going to be doing that, and I'll be streaming that on Twitch. And if they want to follow me on Twitter, they'll find out more information about it.
Yeah, for sure. I was just gonna say, if you can let folks know like the date and the time, or if folks actually just want to follow Isaac, why don't you go ahead and, like, when you get a second, drop your Twitter accounts and stuff like that in there. So for people that are interested about PresenceLight, that are interested in the hackathon, you can make sure you follow Isaac. You know, I'm gonna go ahead and share the Git repo again, because I know a few folks have come in later.
If you want to, so instead of sharing the Git repo, let me give you this.
Okay, you have a better link?
I have
Of course you have a better link.
Yeah, I have. No, I want to showcase something really quick, so I just got to get to it. Bear with me. Stall, Cecil, stall.
Sure. Okay. But yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Like, if folks are interested in knowing about these things, again, we shared the Git repo earlier. You know, Isaac also is on Twitter a lot, and I'm actually going to go pull up his Twitter right now. It is twitter.com/theamazing Isaac Levin. No, I'm joking. That's not what it is. But
I just pasted in the private chat. I just pasted a URL that people can get more info about PresenceLight.
Okay. You're using the URL list?
Yeah, no. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I wanted to show off. So my good friend Cecil worked with another good friend of mine named Burke to build this thing called the URL list, which I use extensively. That's awesome. So that has some cool stuff in it. Like, it has a link to the Chocolatey page and the store, and then the GitHub repo, and a blog post I did about just building the PresenceLight in general. So people can take full advantage of that.
All right, great. Awesome. Well, Isaac, I think we're just about time. I'm just looking to see if we have any more questions or anything that folks are saying in the chat. Casey is saying, I have one and I can play, although it's a portable keyboard. That's funny. Okay. Yeah, I think that's about it. So
cool.
Again, hey, Isaac, this was great, man. It's good catching up with you. We haven't actually seen each other in a long time, considering that we actually worked
probably over a year. And so Cecil and I live on the exact opposite parts of the United States. Like, I live in Washington. He lives in Florida. So it's literally like the farthest possible that we could be away. But I'm hoping that eventually things will clear themselves up and we can find an opportunity to meet up at an event, or when you come to Redmond or whatever.
Yeah, we definitely need to have you on the On.net show, like not the live one that we're doing now, but like one of our pre-records, and have you come on and do like some really cool stuff with like IoT.
Yeah, I'm always looking forward to do fun stuff.
Cool. And folks that are watching, if you've never heard about our show before, shame on you, first of all. But secondly, Make sure to, after you've, watched our live stream, I'm going to post another link inside of the chat really quickly. Make sure you head over to Channel 9 where we have tons of interesting shows. On .NET being one of them. We also have the Xamarin Show where James is on with his, group of folks and community members talking about building mobile things. We have Azure Friday on there talking about Azure things. Tons of great content, AI shows and tons of, all kinds of stuff, right? So, but definitely make sure you go over and check out on.net. Make sure you go and check out Isaac on Twitter and follow the links that he shared with us from the URL list. And other than that, I think that's it. I think that's a wrap. So thank you all for watching. I'm gonna find the bye-bye. Is there a bye-bye?
Or a dramatic, to like John Galloway, do we have a dramatic zoom out?
Do we?
James,
I don't think
do we have
we do.
dramatic zoom out?
Can I,
James.
can I do a thing? No, I don't think we can do a thing. Anyway, we're just gonna say bye. Thank you for watching. I'm playing with new stuff, so no worries. That's why it's a little like choppy coming off the end of this.
And also, just in general, like if you have any thoughts about this stream and the quality of it, you can send all of them to Cecil's home address at.
I'm gonna get all this hate mail. You never, ever should host this show again.
Light theme. Oh!
No, don't do that. Don't do that to me. Don't do that to me. I promise. I'll be better next time. I promise. I swear to God.
This was great. Thank you so much for having me on, Cecil.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this was fun, man. This was a lot of good energy. I think folks in the chat really liked it. So again, thank you all for watching. Thank you, Isaac, for being here. And make sure you check us out again in another 2 weeks. We're gonna have another guest on on.net Live.
See you later, everybody.